Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
Today we'll be discussing Book 1, Chapter 2 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 3 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book, but knowing me and my big mouth, I'm sure to spoil something for someone in advance. So I'm sorry in advance. Not sorry like Pepsi after their ad claiming racial and police tensions could be solved with a Pepsi. A Pepsi, for goodness sakes. This is Texas, sir. It would take moon pies and RC Cola for that ridiculous concept to even be feasible.
RC Cola, wow. What's the other one? Tab. Is Tab another Southern soda?
Tab is, I don't know what Tab falls under. I think that was a diet-ish drink.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. It's Dr. Pepper's the big one here in Texas and RC Cola. But RC is real Southern, but Dr. Pepper's Texas specific.
That mention of that ad that Pepsi did, and since we're in 7 cities, I'll go ahead and say Bibsi because Arabic, that's how they say it.
Oh, okay.
It reminds me of the ad in The Boys that was so tone deaf that, what's his name did? What's the fast guy's name?
Yes, A-Train. I think I was riffing on that. You know it was. Riffing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's too funny.
Hilarious.
That is hilarious.
A quick warning. Today's episode contains descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Our show is listener supported, and if you'd like to support us, we would really appreciate that. And you can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 2, Part 3. This is our first Part 3.
Yes.
Chapters.
It's a heck of a chapter.
It is. They're going to be getting beefier as time goes on.
Oh, my word. What's it going to be like? I'm serious. What's it going to be like when we get to Crippled God? Are they going to be like 7 or 10-parter episodes?
I can't remember how long the chapters were at that point.
Yeah.
I could see us getting up to a Part 4 potentially on some of them. We'll see how it goes beyond that.
Okay.
We pick up the chapter immediately after Fiddler and Kalam were making fun of Crocus, joking that they hoped he'd catch Blue Tongue from the rats in the alley behind their hideout, and that would prevent him from whining. Kalam made his way toward Genrob with a moonless sky overhead. Reminder, the Genrob is the collapsed palace which was built on top of an old city. This caused the palace to collapse, apparently, potentially, by somebody dropping something in the kitchen.
Right.
Unconfirmed.
Someone sure felt bad about it, though.
Yes. The old ramps climbed to the hill's summit like a giant's stairs. There were holes periodically where chiseled blocks of stone had been removed for use in other parts of Erlitan. Kalam scrambled lithely over the rubble and kept low so that he would make little outline against the sky, should anyone glance up from the streets below. The city was quiet, its silence unnatural. Kalam easily avoided the Malazan patrols who were loud with their unease of potentially encountering ghosts among the ruins. That's a funny bit of superstition there.
Yeah. Who's to say it's not real? We have ghosts in Hitter's Tower hanging out.
Good point. Kalam reached the crest and paused, then looked down on the streets of Erlitan. The Fist's Keep, once the home of the city's holy Falad, rose dark and misshapen above a well-lit compound. Within that stone edifice, the military governor of the Malazan Empire cowered, having shut his ears to the heated warnings of the Red Blades and whatever Malazan spies and sympathizers had not yet been driven out or murdered. The entire occupying regiment was holed up in the keep's barracks, having been called in from the garrison fort strategically placed around Erlitan's circumference. The keep could not accommodate so many people. The well was already foul, and soldiers slept on the bailey's flagstones. In the harbor, 2 ancient Falari triremes were moored, and a lone, undermanned company of marines held the imperial docks. The Malazans were under siege with not a hand yet raised against them. Looks like they let things really get out of hand, didn't they?
Yeah, it's, can you say cholera or dysentery here?
Oh, that'd be terrible.
Yeah, this is rife for this kind of era if they're not careful.
In addition to that, the fact that they allowed themselves to be so worried
Yes.
about the insurgency coming that they just backed themselves into a corner and are
Yeah.
hiding there, basically.
They're
It's
hiding there, yeah.
not a good way to solve this problem.
No.
Kalam found within himself conflicting loyalties. He was from 7 cities by birth, but he had fought for the Malazan Empire by choice. He'd fought for Emperor Kelonved and Dasim Ultor
That's
and Whiskey Jack and Dujek One Arm, but not Lasine. Betrayal cut those bonds long ago. The Emperor would have cut the heart out of this rebellion with its first beat. A short but unremitting bloodbath, followed by a long peace. But Lasine had left the old wounds to fester, and what was coming would silence Hood himself. Why do you think she let things get so bad? Did the Empire overextend itself in Genebacchus?
I'm assuming there is some of that because we do know that she is overextended. But I don't know. Is there any of this that might, if she wins, that she'll be heralded as a champion / genius? If she, should she pull this off?
Well, when she took over, 7 Cities was under the Malazan banners already.
Yes.
Because Whiskey Jack had just returned from that campaign in 7 Cities at the beginning of Gardens of the Moon, the prologue for Gardens of the Moon, right?
Yes.
I guess the thing is, all the forces that they're recruiting now were being sent to Genebacchus, presumably.
Yeah.
And then they kind of let things go on 7 Cities. I don't know that there was anything here to win. It was more theirs to lose.
Yeah, it's more theirs to lose. And I guess that they've probably been offered no support with everything else that's been going on. And so it's just they've just been they're just left there. They're expected to hold it down, but they're just left there. Is kind of how it feels like. So yeah, I think you're right. It's just a matter of them of overextension in Genebacchus.
Well, it's almost reminiscent of Afghanistan,
right?
Isn't it?
Black Hawk Down. It's more like Black Hawk.
The people don't want you there. Yeah. You're there.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's.
I mean, some people wanted us there, but
not enough.
I would say a significant portion of them did not, and that's why things reverted as quickly as they did. It feels a lot like that, doesn't it?
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
That may be that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
It's hard to control an empire, especially if you don't have the resources right now.
When it's that far away from the supplies and other reinforcements, if halfway across the world, it is difficult to project your forces in this world in particular. They can't move their whole armies through the Warrens.
No, it's hard to move supplies through there that way too. You can move some.
Kalam turned from the hill's crest. The landscape before him was a tumbled maze of shattered limestone and bricks, sinkholes and knotted shrubs. Clouds of insects hovered over black pools. Bats and risen darted among them. Risen are the squirrel-sized winged reptiles that are common on the 7 Cities continent.
Squirrel-sized. And I forget those things are that big.
Yeah. Near the center rose the first 3 levels of a tilted tower. The opening of a doorway was visible at its base. Kalam studied it for a time, then finally approached. He was 10 paces from the opening when he saw a flicker of light within. Kalam withdrew a knife, tapped the pommel twice against a block, then crossed to the doorway. A voice from its darkness stopped him. "No closer, Kalam Mikar." Kalam spat loudly, then said, "Mebra, you think I don't recognize your voice? Vile risen like you never wander far from their nest, which is what made you so easy to find. And following you here was even easier." Mebra growled, "I have important business to attend to. Why have you returned? What do you want of me? My debt was with the bridge burners, but they are no more." Kalam said, "Your debt was with me." Mebra retorted, "And when the next Malazan dog with the sigil of a burning bridge finds me, he can claim the debt as well? And the next after that? Oh no, Cal." Kalam was in the doorway before Mebra realized it. He lunged into the darkness. A hand flashed out unerringly to grip Mebra by the throat. Mebra squawked, dragged from his feet as Kalam lifted him and threw him against a wall. Kalam held him there with a knife point pricking the hollow above Mebra's breastbone. Something Mebra had been clutching to his chest fell and thudded heavily at their feet. Kalam did not spare the item a glance. His eyes were fixed on Mebra's. Kalam said, "The debt." Mebra gasped. "Mebra is an honorable man, pays every debt, pays yours." Kalam grinned and said, "The hand you've just closed on that dagger at your belt had best remain where it is, Mebra. I see all that you plan. There in your eyes. Now look into mine. What do you see?" This is a lot like a cat toying with a mouse, isn't it?
Oh, most assuredly. That's just, fantastic.
Mebra's breath quickened. Sweat trickled down his brow. He said, "Mercy." Kalam's brows rose, and he said, "A fatal misreading." Mebra tried again. "No, no, I ask for mercy, Kalam. In your eyes, I see only death. Mebra's death. I shall repay the debt, my old friend. I know much, all that the fist needs to know. I can deliver Erlatan into his hands." Kalam said, "No doubt," and released his grip on the man's throat, then stepped back. Mebra slid down the wall into a feeble crouch. Kalam continued, "But leave the fist to his fate." Mebra looked up, in his eyes a sudden cunning. He said, "You are outlawed, with no wish to return to the Malazan fold. You are 7 cities once again. Kalam, may the 7 bless you." Does this guy remind you of Benny from The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser?
Yes. Yes, that's Kevin J. O'Connor, by the way. And that is too funny because I just saw him in a horror movie I watched with the missus the other day, and he plays, I think that's the only character he plays. He's more clean. He's more cleaned up. He's not nearly as dirty, but it's basically the same character.
Okay.
Really great horror movie if you like sleazy horror movies from the 90s. It's Lord of Illusions by Clive Barker. Really gnarly. Scott Bakula is the man, and he's the hero in that one.
Okay.
It's like an occult investigator investigating real weirdness going on. And Kevin O'Connor was in touch with the darkness at one time, and it's Kevin O'Connor. He can't help but play himself. Apparently, I like him, but that's what you get.
Yeah. Maybe that he's one of those actors that just plays himself.
That is. If you need him to play, there's a couple of people. If you want, and no offense, because I love Keanu Reeves and I love Liam Neeson, but if you need Liam Neeson to be Liam Neeson in the film, you get Liam Neeson.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need Keanu Reeves to be you get Keanu Reeves. You don't get somebody else to be Keanu Reeves. You get Keanu.
George Clooney.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Some people can only play themselves, and I like who they are.
Yeah, they're likable. That's why.
Yeah.
You like watching their movies.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I'll put up with Clooney. He's so daggum handsome.
Kalam said, "I need the signs, Mebra. Safe passage through the Odon." Mebra said, "You know them." Kalam interrupted, "The symbols have bread. I know the old ones, and those will get me killed by the first tribe that finds me." Mebra said, "Passage is yours with but one symbol, Kalam. Across the breadth of 7 cities, I swear it." Kalam stepped back and asked, "What is it?" Mebra said, "You are Dryjna's child, a soldier of the apocalypse. Make the whirlwind gesture. Do you recall it?" Suspicious, Kalam slowly nodded. He said, "Yet I have seen so many more, so many new symbols. What of them?" Mebra said, "Amidst the cloud of locusts, there is but one. How best to keep the red blades blind? Please, Kalam, you must go. I have repaid the debt." Kalam said, "If you have betrayed me, Adafon ben Delat shall know it. Tell me, could you escape Quick Ben with his warns unveiled?" Mebra shook his head. His face was pale. Kalam repeated, "The whirlwind." Mebra said, "Yes, I swear by the 7. Kalam commanded, "Do not move." With one hand on the long knife at his belt, Kalam stepped forward, crouched, and collected the object that Mebra had dropped earlier. He heard the spy's breath catch and smiled. Kalam said, "Perhaps I will take this with me, as guarantee." Mebra pleaded, "Please, Kalam." Kalam said, "Silence!" He found himself holding a muslin-wrapped book. He pulled the dirt-stained cloth away, then whispered, "Hood's breath! From the high fist's vault at Aaron into the hands of an early spy." He looked up and met Mebra's eyes, then asked, "Does Pormqual know of the theft of that which is to unleash the apocalypse?" Mebra grinned, displaying a row of sharp, silver-capped teeth. He said, "The fool could have his silk pillow stolen from under him and would not know it. You see, Kalam, if you take this as guarantee, every warrior of the apocalypse will be hunting you. The holy book of Dryjna has been freed and must return to Raraku, where the seeress," Kalam finished, "will raise the whirlwind." The ancient tome felt heavy as a slab of granite in his hands. Its Bedouin hide binding was stained and scarred, the lambskin pages within smelling of lanolin and bloodberry ink. And on those pages, words of madness. And in the holy desert waits Shaikh, the seeress, the rebellion's promised leader. What a coincidence. If Kalam and Fiddler hadn't decided to take this route to get to Kwantali, Kalam wouldn't have encountered this book.
Right. You're exactly right.
And last episode, we discussed whether there was a measure of fate involved when Fiddler encountered Kimlock the Spirit Walker. And this has the same flavor to it, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say very much so. They're both very, I would say, divinely appointed encounters for sure.
Mm-hmm. Kalam said, "You shall tell me the final secret, Mebra, the one the carrier of this book must know." Mebra's eyes widened with alarm. He said, "This cannot be your hostage, Kalam. Take me instead, I beg you." Kalam said, "I shall deliver it into the holy desert Raraku, into Shaik's own hands, and this shall purchase my passage, Mebra. And should I detect any treachery, should I see any single soldier of the apocalypse on my trail, the book is destroyed. Do you understand me?" Mebra blinked sweat from his eyes, then jerked a nod. He said, "You must ride a stallion the color of sand, your blood blended. You must wear a talaba of red. Each night you must face your trail on your knees and unwrap the book and call upon Dryjna, that and no more, not another word. For the whirlwind goddess shall hear and obey, and all signs of your trail shall be obliterated. You must wait an hour in silence, then wrap the book once again. It must never be exposed to sunlight, for the time of the book's awakening belongs to Shaik. I shall now repeat those same instructions." Kalam growled, "No need." What an incredibly specific set of instructions that
I know
is.
it. I love it. It is so funny.
It's almost like a prayer, isn't it?
Yes, it's very similar.
Like the people that are waiting for the apocalypse to come, the prophecy, it's almost like it's built into it.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very apocalyptic religion for sure. It's all it's about is the apocalypse of the whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
They jump up all the time, dude. So here we go.
Well, there's something to this.
I was going to say, in this world, for sure, there's reasons to beware of apocalypses.
Yeah.
I mean, well, later on in this chapter, I don't know if we narrowly avoid one then.
Oh, true. Mebra asked, "Are you truly an outlaw?" In response, Kalam asked, "Is this not proof enough?" Mebra said, "Deliver into Shaik's hands the book of Dryjna, and your name shall be sung to the heavens for all time, Kalam. Betray the cause, and your name shall ride spit into the dust." What a curse. I love that.
Yes, it is.
It's so great. Good.
So Seven Cities, what can I say?
Mm-hmm.
I love that there's the Seven City stuff permeates, as we've talked about in the previous book in Guards of the Moon, how all that, some of those mannerisms have crept into the army then. Here you're in the land of it. So
right.
This is a spit-covered book. It's a dust-covered book. It's a hot and sweaty book that we're going through, folks. And it's a haul, dude. It's brutal. It's great.
Kalam shrouded the book once more in its muslin wrap, then tucked it into the folds of his tunic. He said, "Our words are done." Mebra said, "Blessings of the seven, Kalam Makar." Kalam grunted in reply, then moved to the doorway. He paused to scan outside. Seeing no one under the moonlight, he slipped through the opening. Mebra crouched against the wall and watched Kalam leave. He strained to hear telltale signs of Kalam crossing the rocks, bricks, and rubble, but heard nothing. Mebra wiped sweat from his brow, tilted his head back against the cool stone, and closed his eyes. A few minutes later, he heard the rustle of armor at the tower's entrance. His eyes still shut, Mebra asked, "You saw him?" A low voice rumbled in reply. "Lostara follows him. He has the book?"
Yes, there's a name right there.
Yeah.
I'll mention it later on.
Okay. Mebra smiled and said, "Not the visitor I anticipated. Oh no, I could never have imagined such a fortuitous guest. That was Kalam Makar." The voice said, "The bridge burner? Kiss of Hood, Mebra. Had I known, we would have cut him down before he'd taken a step from this tower." Mebra said, "Had you tried, you and Aralt and Lostara would now be feeding your blood to Jen Rob's thirsty roots."
Yeah, like I said, Lostara, that's another dangerous name there. I don't know if it's being worthy of being italicized like a decimal.
On the topic of whether that name is worthy of the same reverence as Dasim Ultor, from a accomplishment perspective, I mean, we don't know much about her yet, but that may change in the future.
Yes.
The large warrior barked a laugh and stepped inside. Behind him, as the spy had guessed, loomed Aralt Arpat, guarding the entrance. Tene Baralta rested his gauntleted hands on the sword pommels on either side of his hips. He asked, "What of the man you first approached?" Mebra sighed. "As I told you, we would likely have needed a dozen nights such as this one. The man took fright and is probably halfway to Gadanisban by now. He..." reconsidered, as any reasonable man would. Mebra rose to his feet and brushed the dust from his talaba. He said, I cannot believe our luck, Beralta. Tene Beralta's mailed hand was a blur as it flashed out and struck Mebra, the spurred links raking deep gashes across the man's face. Blood spattered the wall. Mebra reeled back and his hands flew to his face. Tene Beralta calmly said, You are too familiar. You have prepared Kalam, I take it. The proper instructions? Mebra spat blood, then nodded. He said, You shall be able to trail him unerringly, Commander. I guess there's a reason those instructions were so specific.
Right. It's like, is he activating the tracing spell every night?
Kalam wasn't suspicious, so it sounded legit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is from this, I'm assuming he's grown up with whatever teachings of this being washed over him, or being bathed in this stuff as a young person, I'm assuming. Knows about Sheikh and whatnot. So I don't know if he's a follower or not, but he's enough of a believer to take it, and I guess we'll see.
Now, one thing I just realized is we were commenting on how the Malazans had gotten themselves painted into a corner.
Yes.
They're all huddled up in the fort.
Yes.
The local people, the Red Blades, that are loyal to the Malazan Empire, they seem to be taking matters into their own hands by releasing this book so they can trace down the leader of the rebellion.
Yeah. It's a bold move.
They're trying to cut the heart out of it.
Yeah. We will come to see that Tene Beralta is one of these guys that he's a real dogged kind of fella. And as much as he's unlikable, he's also kind of he's a good, I guess he's, as far as bad guys go, he's a good bad guy. I dislike him, but he's driven. He's got character.
Yeah, he's got an interesting story arc.
You don't rise to the top of that bunch without being pretty fierce.
Beralta asked, all the way to Shaikh's camp? And this in response to Mebra telling him that he should be able to follow his trail unerringly. Mebra said, yes, but I beg you, be careful, sir. If Kalam senses you, he will destroy the book. Stay a day behind him even more. Tene Beralta removed a fragment of veteran hide from a pouch at his belt. He said, the calf yearns for its mother. Mebra finished, and seeks her without fail. To kill Shaikh, you shall need an army, Commander. Beralta smiled and said, that is our concern, Mebra. Mebra drew a deep breath, hesitating, then said, I ask only one thing, sir. Beralta said, you ask? Mebra said, I beg, Commander. Beralta asked, what is it? Mebra said, Kalam lives. Beralta said, your wounds are uneven, Mebra. Allow me to caress the other side of your face. Dude,
wow.
I love this quote. I highlighted this on my first read through. It is so callous. It's just too good.
Yeah. Hey, again, that's kind of so. I view it as you and I have talked. We like bad guys in our stories, and we like bad guys that we like. And I mean, Tene Beralta's pretty rough customer, if I remember correctly. Aside from Popper and Mebra in the jib like that, I don't remember a whole lot. He's just the leader of the Red Blades in this area, so he's a pretty bad fella.
I just picture it's like some mafia guy after he backhanded somebody, and they start saying things like you. It's just it's such a good
dude. I'm sorry, I had an instant Robert Loggia moment there. I'm sorry.
Who's that?
Robert Loggia.
Unfamiliar.
There's a great movie called Innocent Blood, and it's the guy it's John Landis. He did Animal House and American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, I'm familiar with John Landis. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's his mobster movie. It's his vampire mobster movie.
Okay.
And the idea is that Robert Loggia is the mafia leader, and Don Rickles is his number two. And this is 80s, 90s. It's really good. It's a good horror movie. It's a good vampire movie, and it's a great mafia movie. And it's John Landis, so it's also pretty funny at points. But Robert Loggia is the mob boss. And there's this great Family Guy reference to Robert Loggia, and this woman is at the airport, and it's like, he said, how do you spell your name, sir? It's Robert Loggia. Could you spell that for me? R as in Robert Loggia. O as in like, oh my gosh, it's Robert Loggia. B as in like, boy, I can't believe I'm standing here talking to Robert Loggia. But it's like, he's a great mafia kind of character. He was Scarface. You seen Scarface?
Yes. Is he the guy, Michelle Pfeiffer's original boyfriend?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes. Robert Loggia. Yeah. Fantastic actor. But yeah, that's a great movie. You need his Innocent Blood.
So the mention of John Landis. Have you seen the movie Into the Night?
No, I have not.
Okay. It's a movie about a man who has insomnia, and it's played by Jeff Goldblum, and he lives in Southern California. He's an engineer by day, electrical engineer. He comes home one day, he finds out his wife's having an affair because he came home like in the middle of the day to try and take a nap or something. And then his friend tells him, you should fly to Las Vegas overnight. His friend's played by Dan Aykroyd. So He goes to the airport and witnesses Michelle Pfeiffer, which oddly, another movie that
Right.
she's in. Some men are trying to kidnap her, and he gets embroiled in this intrigue. But the reason I'm mentioning this is those men, I've mentioned before that I'm half Iranian. They're the Shah of Iran's Savak, his like secret police, and they're trying to get something from her. So John Landis worked in all of these Iranian tropes into the movie with these Savak guys. It is absolutely hilarious if you're Iranian, because you're like the mannerisms and the stuff that they're doing. Sometimes they're speaking Farsi. It's hilarious, dude. But the movie itself is funny. It's an 80s movie.
What's it called?
It's called Into the Night.
Into the Night. Okay.
Yeah. It's a funny movie. So I would recommend it. But if you're Iranian, you'll doubly enjoy it because of all the stuff that's in there. Moving along, Mebra pleaded, "Hear me out, Commander. The bridge burner has returned to 7 cities. He claims himself a soldier of the apocalypse. Yet is Kalam one to join Shaikh's camp? Can a man born to lead content himself to follow?" Beralta asked, "What is your point?" Mebra continued, "Kalam is here for another reason, Commander. He sought only safe passage across the Pan-Potson Odon. He takes the book because to do so will ensure that passage. The assassin is heading south. Why? I think that is something the Red Blades and the Empire would know. And such knowledge can only be gained while he yet breathes." Beralta said, "You have suspicions." Mebra said one word, "Aaron." Tene Beralta snorted. He said, "To slip a blade between Pormqual's ribs? We would all bless that, Mebra." Mebra said, "Kalam cares nothing for the High Fist." Beralta asked, "Then what does he seek at Aaron?" Mebra said, "I can think of only one thing, Commander. A ship bound for Malaz." Mebra watched with hooded eyes as his words sank roots into the Red Blade commander's mind. After a long moment, Tene Beralta asked in a low voice, "What do you plan?" Although it cost him, Mebra smiled.
That's pretty astute for Mebra to have worked that out himself, I think.
He's cunning.
Very smart there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, rats are smart.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Now, during this whole conversation, Mebra makes an interesting comment. He says, Kalam is not one to follow.
Yes.
Yet he follows Whiskey Jack.
Yes, he does. And even Kalam had mentioned something earlier about about the groups he had followed, but he follows certain people.
Mm-hmm.
So all these people, obviously, I mean, the Malazans, obviously under the Emperor, brought out the cream of the crop, and man, they did things to earn these folks' loyalty. Whoever works for them, man, they just heart and soul owned by Dujak and Whiskey Jack.
Yeah, the Emperor had a weird way of getting loyalty from people too.
Yes.
They made that comment about he talked to Coltane and somehow won him over.
Yeah.
After Coltane would lead a rebellion against him.
Yes. So it's like, I would like to know more of the Emperor, this magnetic figure. Is it just because power draws power? Is that why he had all these people? Because he was so powerful, he just drew all this power to him?
No, because Lysine is equally powerful.
She is, but she hasn't ever built anything like this. I mean, like this group like the Bridge Burners, or all these. I mean, all these other fellows that work at Dujak, Whiskey. I mean, these legendary people that just they by the bushel. It's like the legendary people are just a lot of folks that how it is. Yeah, we get some leaders that just pull some great folks to them and are able to do that. That's their skill.
Yeah, some people are born leaders, and some people want the power, but they aren't the best leaders.
Yes, it's hard because bleeding is hard, man. It's a hard gig.
It is, but you have to think the way Lysine took over, it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Yes, it does. Well, a lot of folks were hung out to dry, and she's, apparently been picking off. I mean, she's picked off all of the Bridge Burners, but about 35, 40 of them in total. So, I mean, that's a lot. And she's been pretty successful at grinding down a bunch of folks, and she's still got Dujak. But
was that intentional, though?
That's true. I don't know if it's necessarily intentional. You know what's funny? I think from Erikson's point of view, it's like I almost feel like we're supposed to feel like it's intentional.
Initially, yes.
When you read the Esselmont stuff, you almost kind of get like, there is another side to this story. And there is.
Perspective.
Yes, perspective adds a lot.
When Bolt had his little conversation with Diker, the last portion of the chapter that we covered, when he presented the viewpoint that everybody abandoned Lysine, okay, you can kind of see her side of things, but Diker had an equally valid point in that his friends were betrayed by her. So why would there be loyalty? If they were all friends with the Emperor and they felt she had betrayed the Emperor, why would they want to be loyal to her?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's a very valid point. Because they were very loyal to the Emperor, and to take him out, it's like, whoa, that's our guy,
That whole thing on perspective, though, I'll have to keep that in mind, because I'll have to try to put myself in Malik Rel's position,
right,
to try to see what his perspective could be.
That's a good thing to think about. Thank you.
It's gonna be hard.
Yes, it will.
It'll be real hard.
Good luck, sir.
I appreciate that. All right. We go to Icarium and Mappo. The cliffs in front of them rose from the desert floor the height of 400 arm spans. Gouged across the weathered face were deep fissures, and tucked inside the largest of these, 150 arm spans above the sands, was a tower. A single arched window showed black against the bricks. Mappo sighed shakily. I see no obvious approach, but there must be one. He shot a glance back at Icarium and said, You believe it's occupied. Icarium rubbed the crusted blood from his brow, then nodded. He half slid the sword from its sheath, frowning at the fragments of flesh still snagged on the notched edge. The divers had caught them unawares. A dozen leopards the color of sand, streaming from a gully bed less than 10 paces to their right as the two travelers prepared to make camp. There's your big cat divers for you.
Right on, dude. 12 of them. Wow. That's pretty strong kung fu there, isn't it? To have that many of them. That's a lot.
One of them alone would be bad enough.
Yeah. Well, for us normal folks.
Yes. Yeah, we're not 7 feet tall.
Right.
You're a lot closer to 7 feet than I am. But,
I'm maybe just shy, but
One of the beasts had leapt onto Mappo's back, jaws closing on the nape of his neck, the fangs punching through the trell's tough hide. It had attacked him as if he was an antelope, seeking to bite down on his windpipe as it dragged him down, but Mappo was no antelope. Though the canines sank deep, they found only muscle. Enraged, Mappo had reached over his head and torn the animal from his shoulders. Gripping the snarling leopard by its skin at neck and hips, he had slammed it hard against a boulder, shattering its skull. That's a testament to how strong he is.
Yeah, wow. You go, Mappo.
While we're here with these big cats, I was reading the other day that tigers, though they're the largest cat, don't actually have the strongest bite. It's jaguars that have the strongest bite.
I believe that. You watch them fellas eat them crocodiles? Is it crocodiles or alligators they like to hunt? They're down in South America.
I think they have caiman down there.
The caiman, that's what...
They might have crocodiles too. But you're right. They can bite through their skull. Turtle shells, they can bite through those. So it's the methodology of killing that dictates how much bite strength is required. Because tigers, I believe, they bite the back of the neck and try to sever the spine, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's a... I thought that was... I assumed that was all the big cats.
No, lions
they attack the back. Okay.
Lions suffocate. They grab the front and then they bite down and so they can't breathe.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I thought
it might be the inverse, but it's a different methodology. So yeah, those three in particular have different killing methods. I can't remember the specifics of the other ones.
I know the jags and the more like the cougars and things that are in our like American outdoors tend to be back hunters. They tend to be the ones that want to try and grab you by the back of the neck kind of deal. And you can't turn your back. There's a story of a woman who was attacked by one. This is not terribly long ago. It was attacked. I forget where. I think it was in California by a cougar or something. And she had managed to she kept her back away from the animal for hours, getting her way. But she got side of the road and she turned her back on him again to move to the road, and he got her finally. Real sad because but it shows that they was waiting for the whole time just to turn her back. That's all they were waiting on.
It's rough watching those animals hunt sometimes, but it's nature.
It is. Hey, it's nature, baby, and I love the cats. Hey, I can give you a quick cat killing story. I feed an outdoor cat here, and she's become friendly enough with me. I can kind of pet her here and there, but I had a locust or a cicada, flying and buzzing around. It was nighttime, and I don't know why it's buzzing around. I have a yellow light, so maybe it got lost under my thing and couldn't see. And she got bothered. I didn't want to go inside because I thought it would let him in the door because he's hanging out by the door. And she just jumped up from the thing and killed it. I mean, just
Oh.
ate it, like bit him in the neck, kind of head, kill him, and then went back to eating her food in her bowl. She didn't eat him. She just chopped him and killed him. Like, right on, thanks.
Nice. That cat behavior is funny where they bring you stuff.
I love that.
So we recently adopted a stray cat that appeared out of nowhere. Okay. She's really cute, little calico, and she's fallen in love with me. And she's bringing me toy mice. She brought me a pen the other day.
I wonder where she's stealing it from.
My wife, obviously.
Okay. Oh, she's your house cat.
Yeah, she's inside.
Oh, okay,
now,
right
yeah.
on.
But she just gets stuff.
She just brings it to me. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's cool, dude. I love that. Does she water her toys? You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen that yet. My big cat that we had to put down last year, he used to do that. He'd put the mice that had a little rattle in them. He'd put them in his water dish.
Yeah, that's the one we always, and that's you'll see that with some cougars and some other bigger cats too. They love to play with their. I don't know. My dad calls it his cats are because he's wanting to give his friend a drink. Because he always finds his toys in his drinking bowl. And you're like, that dude, they're all nasty and wet.
All right, moving on. The other 11 of the divers had closed in on Ikariam. Even as Mappo flung his attacker's body aside and whirled, he saw 4 of the beasts lying motionless around Ikariam. Fear gripped Mappo suddenly as his gaze fell on Ikariam. How far? How far has the jag gone? Beru, bless us, please. It's seeing this fear coming from Mappo should begin to give you ideas about just how powerful Ikariam is.
Yeah, especially given what we've seen of Mappo's strength.
Mm-hmm.
He's shaking off that being chomped on the back of the neck, like just aggravated it, got my muscles.
Right. One of the other beasts had wrapped its jaws around Ikariam's left thigh, and Mappo watched Ikariam's ancient sword chop downward, decapitating the leopard. The head held on briefly, a blood-gushing lump protruding from Ikariam's leg. What a visual that is.
Right? Wow.
The surviving cats circled. And it's interesting that they still think they can win, even though their number is greatly diminished at this point.
Right. And I wonder if this is kind of where some of the problem lie with divers, because has it been mentioned about the fever?
Mm-hmm.
When they get veered or shifted like this into their animal shape, do they struggle against the nature of the beast? Are they more prone to berserker and more animalistic than logical thought at that point?
I would think so.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking too, because the soul taken are different. Soul taken don't seem to struggle with that nature as much as these fellows do.
It depends on the soul taken. Some of them lose themselves.
That's true.
Yeah, I think it's more of an individual thing. How strong is the individual? Because Rilandaris, he seemed pretty present, and he was a divers.
Yes, he is. He's a strong one, poor good gracious.
But this one's not talking to him at all.
No, it's just straight up animal.
Yes, just pure primal at this point.
Yeah. May not be anything, whatever race it was. It's just pure animal at this point, like you said, drawn by the convergence.
Mappo lunged forward and grabbed a tail. He bellowed as he swung the squalling creature through the air. Writhing, the leopard sailed 7 or 8 paces until it struck a rock wall, snapping its spine. It was already too late for the divers. It realized the error and tried to pull away, but Ikariam was unrelenting. Giving voice to a keening hum, the jag plunged among the 5 remaining leopards. They scattered, but not quickly enough. Blood fountained. Sheared flesh thudded into the sand. Within moments, 5 more bodies lay still on the ground. Ikariam whirled, seeking more victims, and the trail took half a step forward. After a moment, Ikariam's high-pitched keening fell away, and he slowly straightened from his crouch. His stony gaze found Mappo, and he frowned. Mappo saw the beads of blood on Ikariam's brow. The eerie sound was gone. Not too far. Safe. Gods below. This path. I am a fool to follow. Close. All too close. The scent of divers' blood so copiously spilled would draw others. The 2 had quickly repacked their camp gear and set off at a swift pace. Before leaving, Ikariam withdrew a single arrow from his quiver, which he stabbed into the sand in full view. They traveled at a dog trot through the night. Neither was driven by fear of dying. For both of them, it was killing that brought a greater dread. Mappo prayed that Ikariam's arrow would prove sufficient warning. And how sick would that be if this was the case? One little symbol is all you need to warn any who would attempt to subdue you.
Oh, again, wow, that is sick. It's like, nope. It's like, Did you watch the movie Nope yet?
No, I started it a couple times, but the kids are always around,
yeah.
so it's difficult to find time to watch it when they're not.
Oh, it's so funny, but because it is that. It's that kind of respect. It's like, could you imagine something seeing that and be like, nope, no, you go ahead. I'm not going that way.
Across this line, you do not.
Yeah. Besides, dude, the Chinaman is not the issue. The preferred nomenclature is Asian American, please.
Dawn brought them to the Eastern Escarpment. We can't go into it.
No.
We'll just start with the Big Lebowski.
It's always right there. Yeah, it's always right there under the surface. Sorry.
Dawn brought them to the Eastern Escarpment. Beyond the cliffs rose the range of weathered mountains that divided Raraku from the Panpotson Odon. Something had ignored the arrow and was trailing them, perhaps a league behind. Mappo had sensed it an hour earlier, a soul taken, and the form it had taken was huge. Ikariam said, "Find us the ascent," and strung his bow. He set out his remaining arrows, then squinted back along their trail. After 100 paces, the shimmering heat that rose like a curtain obscured everything beyond. If the soul taken came into view and charged, Ikariam had time to loose half a dozen arrows. The warrens carved into their shafts could bring down a dragon, but Ikariam's expression made it clear he was sickened by the thought. I wonder what warren that would be. Perhaps Amtos Falak, or maybe not, given the Talani mass would take to hunting him, potentially.
Right? That's a fantastic question. The thing with Ikariam is, what's his other race? Is he human?
Can't remember.
I can't remember what it is either. And I don't think it's human, but I'm kind of curious whatever warren they, because I don't know what he is. He's an enigma.
Mm-hmm.
Other than we know that he's very powerful. And there is fear about being around him.
Yeah, it doesn't say what he's half of on the wiki. So I don't know if we ever find that out. All right. Mappo felt the puncture wounds on the back of his neck. The torn flesh was hot, septic, and crawling with flies. The muscles ached with a deep throb. He pulled a blade of Jagura cactus from his pack and squeezed its juices onto the wounds. Numbness spread, allowing him to move his arms without the stabbing agony that had him bathed in sweat over the last few hours. He shivered with sudden chill. The cactus juice was so powerful it could be used only once a day, lest the numbing effect spread to the heart and lungs, and if anything, it would make the flies thirstier. Mappo approached the cleft in the rock face. Trell were plains dwellers. Mappo had no special skill in climbing, and he was not looking forward to the task ahead. The fissure was deep enough to be filled with heavy shadows and narrow at the base, barely the width of his shoulders. He ducked and slipped inside. The cool, musty air triggered another wave of shivering. His eyes quickly adjusted, and he made out the fissure's back wall 6 paces away. There were no stairs, no handholds. He looked up. The cleft widened higher up, but was unrelieved until it reached what he took to be the base of the tower. Nothing so simple as a dangling, knotted rope. Growling in frustration, Mappo stepped back into the sunlight. Ikariam stood facing their trail with his bow raised. 30 paces from him was a massive brown bear, down on all fours, swaying, nose lifted and testing the wind. The soul taken had arrived. Mappo joined Ikariam and quietly said, "This one is known to me." Ikariam lowered his weapon, releasing the bowstring's tension. He said, "He is sembling." The bear lurched forward. Mappo blinked against the sudden blurring of his vision. He tasted grit, nostrils twitching at the strong, spicy smell that came with the change. He felt an instinctive wave of fear, a dusty dryness making swallowing difficult. A moment later, the sembling was complete, and a man now strode toward them, naked and pale under the harsh sunlight. Mappo slowly shook his head. When masked, the soul taken was huge, powerful, a mass of muscle. Yet now, in his human form, Mesrem stood no more than 5 feet in height, was almost hairless and thin to the point of emaciation, narrow-faced and shovel-toothed. His small eyes, the color of garnet, shone within wrinkled nests of humor that drew his mouth into a grin. He said, "Mappo Trell, my nose told me it was you." Mappo said, "It's been a long time, Mesrem." Mesrem was eyeing Ikariam. He said, "Aye, north of Nemel it was." Nemel is on the same Seven Cities continent, but it's way to the west. It's further to reach Nemel from their current location than it is to get to Genebakis.
Okay, wow.
And Seven Cities is a huge continent when you think about it.
Yeah. It is.
The Seven Cities portion of it is actually a pretty small component of it.
Right.
The farther west you go, I don't even know if it's considered Seven Cities anymore. It's on the same landmass, I should say.
Okay.
There's a bunch of other stuff over there. Mappo said, "Those unbroken pine forests better suited you, I think." His memories went back to that time for a moment. Those freer days of massive trellis caravans and the great journeys undertaken. Mesrem's grin fell away. He said, "That it did. And you, sir, must be Ikariam, maker of mechanisms, and now the bane of divers and soul-taken. Know that I am greatly relieved you have lowered your bow. There was racing thunder in my chest when I watched you take aim." Ikariam was frowning. He said, "I would be bane to no one, were the choice mine. We were attacked without warning." The words sounded strangely uncertain. Mesrem said, "Meaning you had no chance to warn the hapless creature. Pity the pieces of his soul. I, however, am nothing but precipitous, cursed only with a curious nose. What scent is joined with the trails, I wonder? So close to Jaghut blood, yet different. Now that my eyes have given me answer, I can resume the path." Mappo asked, "Do you know where it takes you?" Mesrem stiffened. He asked, "You have seen the gates?" Mappo said, "No. What do you expect to find there?" Mesrem said, "Answers, old friend. Now I shall spare you the taste of my veering by putting some distance between us. Do you wish me well, Mappo?" Mappo said, "I do, Mesrem. And add a warning. We crossed paths with Rilandaris 4 nights ago. Be careful." Something of the savage bear glittered in Mesrem's eyes. He said, "I shall look out for him." Mappo and Ikariam watched the man walk away. He disappeared behind an outcrop of rock. Ikariam said, madness lurked within him. Mappo flinched at those words. He sighed, "Within them all. I've yet to find an ascent, by the way. The cave reveals nothing." The sound of shod hooves reached them, slow and plodding. From a trail paralleling the cliff face, a man on a black mule appeared. He sat cross-legged on a high wood saddle, shrouded in a ragged, dirt-stained talaba. His hands, which rested on the ornate saddle horn, were the color of rust. A hood hid his features. The mule was a strange-looking beast, its muzzle black, the skin of its ears black, as were its eyes. No lightning of its ebon hue was anywhere visible with the exception of dust and spatters of what might have been dried blood. The man swayed on the saddle as they approached. He hissed, "No way in but the way out. It's not yet the hour. A life given for a life taken. Remember those words. Remember them. You are wounded. You are bright with infection. My servant will tend to you. A caring man with salty hands. One wrinkled, one pink. Do you grasp the significance of that? Not yet. Not yet. So few guests. But I have been expecting you." The mule stopped opposite the cleft, swinging a mournful gaze on the two travelers as its rider struggled to pull his legs from their crossed position. Whimpers of pain accompanied the effort until his frantic attempts overwhelmed his balance, and with a squeal of dismay, the man toppled, thumping into the dust. That's a great visual.
That's an amazing visual. He's got such a great flair for everything, doesn't he, Erikson? Man, great job.
Oh, yeah.
It's just everything's funny. It's just great.
The way he writes humor is definitely up my alley. He did the Willful Child books, which is a kind of a Star Trek parody.
Oh, that's right.
It's hilarious.
I've got to read that one. The one I've bought that I haven't read is the one called Rejoice, A Knife to the Heart. It's another science fiction. It's supposed to be kind of pretty hard science fiction epic. That's supposed to be like, I don't know, real Clark. Really, it's supposed to be real. It's Erikson, dude. It's supposed to be a deeper one, not a funny one. I'm like, okay, I'm down for this one. So I'm eager to check it out.
I haven't had a chance to read that one yet, so I need to check it out. Yeah,
I'm eager.
Seeing crimson red bloom through the talaba's weave, Mappo stepped forward. He said, "You bear your own wounds, sir." The man writhed on the ground like an upended tortoise, his legs still trapped in their crossed position. His hood fell back, revealing a large hawk nose, tufts of wiry gray beard, a tattooed bald pate, and skin like dark honey. A row of perfect white teeth showed in his grimace. Mappo knelt beside him and squinted to see signs of the wound that had spilled so much blood. A smell of iron was pungent in Mappo's nose. After a moment, he reached under the man's cloak and withdrew an unstoppered bladder. Grunting, he glanced over at Ikariam. He said, "Not blood, paint. Red ochre paint." The man snapped, "Help me, you oaf! My legs!" Bemused, Mappo helped the man unlock his legs, every move eliciting moans. As soon as they were free, the man sat up and started beating his own thighs. He said, "Servant, wine! Wine, damn your wood-rotted brain!" Mappo coolly said, "I am not your servant," and stepped back. "Nor do I carry wine when crossing a desert." The man said, "Not you, barbarian." He glared about, then asked, "Where is he?" Mappo asked, "Who?" The man said, "Servant, of course. He thinks carrying me about is his only task. Ah, there." Following the man's gaze, Mappo frowned. "That is a mule, sir. I doubt he could manage a wineskin well enough to fill a cup." Mappo grinned at Ikariam, but he was paying no attention to the proceedings. He had unstrung his bow and now sat on a boulder, where he cleaned his sword. Still sitting on the ground, the man collected a handful of sand and flung it at the mule. Startled, the beast brayed and bolted toward the cleft, where it disappeared into the cave. With a grunt, the man clambered to his feet and stood wobbling, hands held before him, plucking at each other in some kind of nervous tick. He said, "Mostly rude greeting of guests." Most rude greeting was met. Meaningless apologies and kindly gestures very important. "I'm so sorry for temporary collapse of hospitality. Oh yes, I would have more practice if I wasn't the master of this temple. An acolyte is obliged to fawn and scrape, later to mutter and gripe with his comrades in misery. Ah, here comes servant." A wide-shouldered, bow-legged man in black robes had emerged from the cave, carrying a tray bearing a jug and clay cups. He wore a servant's veil over his features, with only a thin slit for his eyes, which were deep brown. The man said, "Lazy fool, did you see any cobwebs?" Servant's Malazan accent caught Mappo by surprise. Servant said, "None, Iskarl." Iskarl yelled, "Call me by my title." Servant said, "High Priest." Iskarl yelled, "Wrong!" Servant tried again. "High Priest Iskarl Pust of the Tessem Temple of Shadow." Iskarl again yelled, "Idiot! You are servant, which makes me..." Servant said, "Master." Iskarl said, "Indeed." Then turned to Mappo. "We rarely talk," he explained. What an intro to this guy. I've always liked him.
I do too, dude. He's too funny. I sometimes forget how funny he is until you just get into the actual interactions. You're like, oh my word.
Yeah.
It's like, I know somebody would want to kill him, but I don't know if he can.
Yeah, he's one of those madmen.
Yes, he is.
A lot of hijinks. Ikariam joined them. He said, "This is Tessem, then. I was led to believe it was a monastery sanctified to the Queen of Dreams." Iskarl snapped. "They left, took their lanterns with them, leaving only," Ikariam said, "shadows." Iskarl said, "Clever jag. But I was warned of that. Oh yes, you two are sick as undercooked pigs. Servant has prepared your chambers, and broths of healing herbs, roots, potions, and elixirs. White peralt, emulor, tralb," Mappo pointed out. "Those are poisons." Iskarl said, "Are they? No wonder the pig died. It's almost time. Shall we prepare to ascend?" Ikariam said, "Lead the way." Iskarl said, "A life given for a life taken. Follow me. None can outwit Iskarl Pust." The high priest faced the cleft with a fierce squint. They waited. After a few minutes, Mappo cleared his throat and asked, "Will your acolytes send down a ladder?" Iskarl said, "Acolytes? I have no acolytes. No opportunity for tyranny. Very sad. No muttering and grumbling behind my back. Few satisfying rewards for this high priest. If not for my god's whispering, I wouldn't bother. Be assured of that. And I trust you will take that into account with all I have done and am about to do." Ikariam said, "I see movement in the fissure." Iskarl grunted, "Bacarala. They nest on this cliffside. Foul, mewling beasts, always interfering, sniffing at this and that, pissing on the altar, defecating on my pillow. They are my plague. They have singled me out. And why? I've not skinned a single one, nor cooked their brains to scoop out of their skulls in civilized repast. No snares, no traps, no poison. Yet still they pursue me. There is no answer to this, I despair." They're defecating on his pillow. Oh, man.
I love that.
As the sun sank further, the Bacarala grew bolder. They flapped from perch to perch high on the cliff wall. They scampered with their hands and feet along cracks in the stone, seeking the risen as the small flying lizards emerged for their night feeding. Small and simian, the Bacarala were winged like bats, tailless, with hides mottled tan and brown. Apart from the long canines, their faces were remarkably human. From the tower's lone window, a knotted rope tumbled down. A tiny round head poked out to peer down at them. Iskarl added, "Of course, a few of them have proved useful." Mappo sighed. He'd hoped for some sorcerous means of ascent to appear, something worthy of a high priest of shadow. He said, "So now we climb." Iskarl indignantly replied, "Most certainly not. Servant climbs, then pulls us up." Ikariam said, "He would be a man of formidable strength to manage me, and Ikariam too." Servant set down the tray he had been holding, spat on his hands, and walked over to the rope. He launched himself upward with surprising agility. Iskarl crouched by the tray and poured wine into the 3 cups. He said, "Servant's half Baccaral, long arms, muscles like iron, makes friends with them, probable source of all my ills." He collected a cup for himself and gestured down at the tray as he straightened, then said, "Fortunate for servant, I am such a gentle and patient master." He looked up to check on servant's climb, then yelled, "Hurry, you snub-tailed dog." Man.
Nice patience.
Servant had already reached the window and clambered through it and out of sight. Iskarl said, "Aminus's gift is servant, a life given for a life taken. One hand old, one hand new. This is true remorse, you'll see." The rope twitched. Iskarl finished the last of his wine, flung the cup away, and scrambled toward the rope. He said, "Too long exposed, vulnerable. Quickly now." He wrapped his hands around a knot, set his feet atop another, then yelled, "Pull! Are you deaf? Pull!" Iskarl shot upward. Ikariam said, "Pulleys. Too fast to be otherwise." Mappa winced as the pain returned to his shoulders, then said, "Not what you were expecting, I take it." Ikariam said, "Tessim, a place of healing, solitary reflection, repository of scrolls and tomes, and insatiable nuns." Mappo asked, "Insatiable?" Ikariam glanced at his friend, an eyebrow rising. "Indeed." Sounds like the castle in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, doesn't it?
Yes, Castle Anthrax. The nuns of Castle Anthrax.
Mappo said, "Oh, sad demise." Ikariam said, "Very." The rope tumbled back down. Mappo said, "In this instance, I think solitary reflection has addled a brain, battling wits with Baccarala and the whisperings of a god most hold as himself insane." In a low voice, Ikariam said, "Yet there is power here, Mappo." Mappo said, "Aye," as he approached the rope. A warren opened in the cave when the mule entered. Ikariam asked, "Then why does the high priest not use it?" Mappo said, "I doubt we'll find easy answers to Iskarl Pust, friend." Ikariam warned, "Best hold tight, Mappo." Mappo said, "Aye." Ikariam reached out suddenly, rested a hand on Mappo's shoulder. "Friend," he said. Mappo asked, "Aye?" Ikariam was frowning. He said, "I am missing an arrow, Mappo. More, there is blood on my sword, and I see upon you dreadful wounds. Tell me, did we fight? I recall nothing." Mappo was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I was beset by a leopard while you slept, Ikariam. Made some use of your weapons. I did not think it worthy of mention." Ikariam's frown deepened. He slowly whispered, "Once again, I have lost time." Mappo said, "Nothing of worth, friend." With a look of desperate pleading in his eyes, Ikariam asked, "You would tell me otherwise?" In response, Mappo asked, "Why would I not, Ikariam?" And thus the chapter ends. Good chapter. Great chapter.
Great chapter.
Yeah.
Man, really great chapter. A lot of action.
For standout moments, the picture that is painted of the scared fist in Erlitan and the dire situation the Malazan forces find themselves in on 7 cities. It's not a good picture.
No, this is bad, okay? It's real bad. It's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these fellows, the Malazans, are up against it here for sure.
Yeah, they put themselves there.
They did, but unfortunately, these fellows are just, they're part of the folks that just got left here, stuck here.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's their fault, but the leadership has not done what it needed to deal with this situation.
No, they've abandoned these folks pretty much.
Kalam's meeting with Mebra and him taking the holy book of Drajna. That's a really important plot point.
It is, and it's also part of a core memory of this series for me, because this is where I think this is kind of one of the first times we see Kalam be Kalam. Even though it doesn't kill anybody, I mean, he's actually kind of going out. We're starting to see him and Fid. They really come to the forefront, and this is in the book where they start to become some of my favorite human characters in the series. Is from this book.
Agreed.
Great. There's a lot of great humans. There's so many great humans in this book, though, man.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Hey, with the Wiccans and everyone, man, we got so many folks in this chapter alone who I love.
Yeah, we're just starting out.
Yeah, it's chapter 2.
Tene Peralta smacking Mebra around, then threatening him in such an eloquent fashion later.
Oh, I enjoy that. He's a real sinister guy, and I love a good sinister villain, but I love the eloquent threats.
Uh-huh.
I always enjoy a good eloquent threat.
And then seeing Mebra slapped around, he's
It's fun.
little rat, maybe he deserves it, maybe he doesn't.
It's fun to
I
see
don't
him
know.
get slapped around.
Yeah.
I think he deserves it.
Okay. Seeing Ikariam on the edge of losing control in the battle with the leopard divers was really important from the perspective that you see
Yes.
Mappo's fear, and it kind of makes you realize, oh, this is a really serious situation.
Yes. And and this is something I really enjoy seeing a lot too. It's Mappo's fear of what Akira might do. Like you said, it's very palpable, and I want to know exactly what he's capable of.
Do you really?
Yes and no. I want to know. I want to know from a statistical point of view, like who is he equivalent to?
You want to see a tier list?
Yes, I need a tier list.
Okay.
Because we know Ikariam is a top tier player as far as power goes, but we obviously know there's something wrong with him. So I mean, he keeps losing time. That's not good.
I like seeing Mesrem's interaction with Mappo and his curiosity about Ikariam.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Any of these introductions of the shapeshifters are cool to me.
Yeah. And the fact that he was happy to see Mappo, he seems like a pretty stand-up fella.
Yeah, seemed to be, but I like that they're actually kind of worried that they could see a touch of madness to him.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right.
Or Mappo sees it, or as Ikariam's like, there's a little madness
he
there
does.
too. It's like, takes one to know one, I guess.
A little bit. The introduction to Iskarol Pust. He's a high priest of shadow. He unceremoniously falls off his mule and needs help uncrossing his legs. The way he talks to his servant, the way he talks in general, actually. And then the fact that he uses Bacarala as acolytes since he has none. What an interesting character.
Right. I love him. He is a great character. He's so funny. He's like an insane cruppa.
Yeah, that's an excellent description.
He's like the anti-cruppa.
And then finishing out the chapter, the intrigue around Mappo lying to Ikariam about him not remembering the battle with the leopard divers. Why would he be lying?
Yeah. And this sadness that Mappo has for this, he's stuck in this friendship caretaker role for a guy. It's like the Hulk with the memento problem.
Oh man, that's a really good comparison. That's a great way of describing it, really. Yeah,
because he doesn't know from day to day what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He's got memories, he can talk and things like this, but he forgets things. And I think because I'm concerned, because I think that I think the more he gets wound up, the more dangerous he becomes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sad. I mean, there's this deep sad, because I've always loved Mappo, and I think it's because of his love for Ikariam.
Yeah, there is that sadness that's been hinted at a couple times so far.
Very much. Yeah. And I like that because Mappo, it's a responsibility.
Mm-hmm. All right, great job tonight. Do you have any final thoughts before we drop off here?
No, just really enjoyed it, man. Really great episode. Great chapter, man. I'm just digging. Love Deadhouse Gates so much so.
Yeah.
Fun time.
Yeah, it's great. Great book. Love it.
Yes, it is. It's amazing.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. See y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.